Welcome to VTS number 7. This is for September 2005. I'm your host, Keith. Too bad for you. You'll notice I've got a little thing here on my mouth, or a microphone. Jazzercise microphone. This is to help out with the crappy audio that I've had in the past for these video segments, and I think it's going to be a lot better. I think you're going to like it a lot more. Anyhow, I got some things on the docket for this month. We're going to take a look at some eases and how we use easing in a sense of timing. We're continuing our timing conversation. We looked at breakdowns and anticipations last month and how to use them together. This month we're going to look at how to think about easing and use eases as your primary tool of spacing, and also how to play with them back and forth in combination with some other parts of the character. And then we're also going to look at a scene that I'm blocking out for myself, just so that I can kind of fill in the blanks for you as to how I like to work. We'll talk a little bit about some of the things we talked about in posing. And it's kind of like a precursor of some of the bigger stuff we'll get into down the road when we get into our planning and our scene performance and our acting and all that stuff, which is the conversation we're going to have after we get past our timing segment, probably another couple months at least. So anyways, welcome aboard. I'm glad you're with us. It's a great day, so let's get started. Okay, eases. What are eases? Well, ease is a term that describes the velocity of motion. So, excuse me, when something is moving very linearly, there's no change in the velocity. And because there's no change in the velocity, it's very, very even. There's no easing into the speed and then easing out of the speed. And that's what easing is. It's just those ramp up to speed and ramp down from speed at the either end of the move. So ramp up faster, then slow down. And the ramp up faster and then the slow down to stop, those are the places where you ease into or out of a move. Now, the discussion of, well, what's an ease in and what's an ease out, a lot of times it just depends on who you're asking. Some people tend to think of, well, I'm easing into the move and I'm easing out of the move. Or some people think I'm easing out of the pose and I'm easing into a new pose. See what I'm saying? So in and in could be at either ends, depending on what you're describing in. You know what I mean? So don't get hung up over what's the real meaning of ease in or what's the real meaning of ease out. There is no universal standard because everybody thinks things a little bit differently. All you need to know is that an ease is that slow change of velocity, slow change of velocity. And we want to capture that sense of velocity of something moving. Why do we want eases? Why do we even care? Well, if you don't have them, everything's very robotic. And it's very, very robotic. And it's just not particularly interesting to look at. It doesn't give a sense of weight. Eases are very, very important for giving a sense of weight. As much as, they're in combination with a bunch of other things. Timing delineates weight, pose delineates weight, breakdown delineates weight, anticipation gives weight. But eases also give weight because something trying to slow itself down is going to require energy. And really animation, for me anyways, is a lot about managing the energy of a motion. Is it really fast? Is there a lot of energy to it? Well, your timing, that determines what your timing looks like, what do your breakdowns look like, what do your overlaps look like, what do your eases look like. Or is the timing a little bit softer, is the energy a little more laid back? You notice the speed, the velocity is different, but there's going to be a sense of, this is going to have, see how the hand just kind of slows down and it goes, and there's like an ease into and an ease out of these kinds of moves. So you wanna be mindful of these things. I remember way back in our first conversation about timing, I said there's 3 aspects of timing. There's timing, there's spacing, and then there's phrasing. Well, timing we've looked at pretty well. We've seen some things that help us understand timing. We've looked a little bit at spacing. We're gonna look at some more today. We're gonna kind of understand what, eases are your primary tools of spacing. They're not the only tools, but they really, really help sell the spacing of something. And you're going to find that where you put an ease doesn't, there is no rule. That's the thing. You got to understand, there's just no rule for this sort of thing, which is why timing is difficult to discuss and why a lot of the old writings tend to focus more on the drawing and the poses and the things that you can capture in a still image, because those are very concrete. You can look at them. You can look at a line and say, this line's better, this line's weak, this line's reverse, this line's not. And it's very concrete. And we know, okay, that's an open curve, that's a closed curve. It's easier for us to discuss these things. But when it comes to timing, there's no rules. It's just, what does it feel right? Does it feel right? Does it feel appropriately heavy? Does it feel appropriately light? Does it feel like it's working with the energy of the character? Is gravity feeling possible? Are we playing games with gravity? Because you can do that in animation. You can go crazy. You know, when you go bing, bing, bing. Well, you know, things don't always hang up there quite that long, but you accentuate that physics for the effect of what you're after in more cartoony stuff. As you might have this. Is a bit more realistic. And those, you know, you're just taking that same principle but playing games with it. So there are no rules. I'm sorry. If you're signed up looking for rules or you know, hard and fast things, there just aren't any. You got to use your eyes, you got to use your brain, you got to use your heart, and you have to assimilate this stuff into you and understand it as much as you possibly can. Now, that's enough of me babbling about these things. Let's take a look at an exercise, and I'll show you some stuff about eases, okay? Okay, let's start talking about some eases here. We have a very simple setup in 10 frames. This little yellow sphere goes in a very linear fashion on the x-axis a number of units. Because it's linear, if you see down here, this red line, which I now select, becomes white. That right there is our F-curve for this thing. You'll notice it's just straight up. Nothing to it. This guy does not have any ease at all. It's just a straight linear move. Now, the way that a lot of people will put ease onto an object in motion inside of, say, a CG program like this, is they'll just select that curve and they'll flatten the tangent, or they'll turn it into spline. And so they'll take the spline, and there you go. Or another way you could do it is just choose flat tangents, and there you have it. And they think their job is done. And to a degree, there is a certain amount of ease out and ease in. I mean, if we slow this down, you can see that the ball does take a little bit to get going, and then it does slow down a little bit, and we see that in the curve. The problem is that's very computery. It feels very computery, and experienced, seasoned professional animators can spot this, and it just generally isn't that terribly interesting to look at. It's not much more interesting to look at than linear stuff. So there's got to be more to it than just going ahead and throwing a spline or a flat tangent on this thing and saying your job is done. And that's where the notion of eases in and ease outs come from. Now, if you're familiar with my website, I do have a tutorial up there that I've had for about a year or more on snappy motion. And really what that tutorial is all about is spacing. That's really what it's about. It's about using your eases to cushion into and out of a move, and using your spacing in such a way as to get something across in an energetic sort of fashion. So let's go ahead, while we're still in linear mode here, and borrow and do some things. So let's go ahead and set a keyframe here at this value, and then come over here and set a keyframe here at this value, and we'll see that there's a keyframe at the first frame of the move and the one just before the end. Now let's go ahead and take these keyframes and let's just move them in a little bit. Alright, this you'll notice there is a definite, yes, things are moving, and there is a slow in and slow out to it. And you notice that that slow in, slow out is a bit different than the one we had before. In fact, to show you that it's a little bit different, let me go ahead and duplicate this guy, move this guy over here, and put him up there, and we'll go ahead and key his X, and this guy comes over here. We'll take this value, pop it into there. Okay, so notice he's got his. So if we select these two together, if I take this one right here and do what we did before, where we have just the flat tangent, and I take this linear one right there and I go ahead and just turn that into spline, just for giggles, you'll see that one has a far more pronounced ease in and ease out. That's the one I built. This right here is what the computer gives you, which isn't much better than linear. This right here is what you build by hand by borrowing time. And so if we play this, the one, mine up here in front, actually has a bit more energy to it, and the other one is a bit more even. Now that may be what you want. You may want some stuff to be more even, but you have to understand how to get there, and this is what I'm trying to do. So by playing with the ease of these things, you can get yourself a lot of different possible combinations. So let's say we take this guy right here and we hide him. We don't really care about him anymore. Let's go back to this guy, take this back to linear so you can keep playing with it. Now if you really want to make this super snappy, you can take this key and move it even closer, and you see that it's covering even more ground there. And so what you might want to do is change where that happens inside this thing so that you have more cushion on the back end of things in order to give yourself a chance to settle out, let your audience catch up to what just happened. And now on a move this fast, we may say to ourselves, boy, you know, I really need to have some anticipation to help sell that, because it is moving very, very fast. So let's go ahead and build some anticipation into this, and this is where we're going to start working with our combinations. Let me give myself some time here, move this whole move off here to the 16 to 26 range. Let's take this key back here, and we'll go ahead and drop another key there. And then what we'll do here is we'll actually move him back. So if we were to look at our F-curve here, we'll notice that he's going backwards, then moving forward. So he moves back and he moves forward. So let's watch this. And there's kind of like a weird pop right there in the middle. And there's a reason why there's a weird pop, is because we're slowing into this move. In fact, let me go ahead and make one more thing here. Let's set a key here at this range so that he can kind of grow into that ease. So let's say he, go into that anticipation. So let's say he kind of hits back in the anticipation, and then it grows, and then he comes forward. The problem is this area right here. See this down here where my mouse is? This key right there is your problem. That's why you have a pop. The reason why you have a pop is because you're combining a big anticipation, which is building a lot of energy, and that energy is going to explode out. The problem is you're slow in. Remember this move was a slow in before? We took this and we took some of the energy and had it build up a little bit moving forward. Well, if you're going to build up energy with your anticipation back here, this is where you're building your energy now. Now you don't need to build the energy in through the move. So what we need to do is we need to understand that if you're going to build big anticipations, you do not want to put big anticipations next to slow ins to a move. Okay? Say that again. If you're going to slow into a move, don't use a big anticipation, because you get this weird business going on where the energy doesn't feel right. Let me take this keyframe and just delete it. So now we're no longer slowing into the move. You notice we're building our anticipation back here, and we're building up that energy, and then we're moving forward. Okay, and I can even take this move right there and tuck it back a little bit more and give ourselves a bit more of a slow out right here. Okay, so now let's watch this. See how there isn't that hitch in the middle anymore? It just builds energy and then it explodes out of that and then does a slow out. And so you want to be mindful of these kinds of things so that you don't try and do too much. And there are certain things that just don't work well together. You know, like beef gravy and ice cream. They both taste great, but they don't taste great together. Slow ins for a move are really good. Big anticipations to build energy are really good. Put them together, not so good, because you get these weird artifacts of trying to fight the physics. So here we have this fun little thing. So let's say we've got ourselves an even bigger anticipation. Let's say we want to make this anticipation really big. So we'll pull them way back, and we'll make this a really big move. Okay? And actually, let's get back into that anticipation very quickly. And hold it very strong. So then, the bigger the anticipation, remember, the faster you can make the move. This might be a bit extreme. Yeah, it's a bit extreme. So we go there. And you notice there that now all of a sudden it's kind of fighting itself on the back end here. Something feels weird about this slow out. Well, actually, something feels weird about the anticipation. We'll cover that in just a second. But something feels weird about this slow out right here. It's such a big buildup of energy back here. And then this big, huge, very fast explosion. And then seemingly, against itself, it slows down. So that feels pretty unnatural. What you want to try and do here is maybe hit an extreme and then settle back. So let's say he settles back. Notice I'm pulling this down. Now he hits the extreme and settles back a bit. You ever wonder, well, should I use a slow out or should I hit an extreme and settle out? A lot of it is determined by the energy of the move and also what the properties are and lots of different things about the character. There's no rules for that, but you see now that feels a little bit better. Big energy buildup, explosive energy out, hits an extreme, and kind of settles back. So for very snappy moves, and let's say we're going to go ahead and ease that settle back because we want to play with the spacing there as well. So now this thing, it's really feeling like it's got some zip to it. It's got some good snap to it. And that's all about just building the energies through anticipations, using your eases with the right combinations of anticipations, understanding does an ease out work with a very, very fast move? Sometimes it does. A lot of times it doesn't. Does an ease in work with a big anticipation? It hardly ever does. And as far as this anticipation being the right size, there's something almost abrupt about it. If I make it even bigger, there's one little trick that you can do, and this one's pretty fun. Let's take and set this key back here. So now I'll zoom in really close on this. So now we have just a one frame hold. You can do anticipations on anticipations, but they're micro anticipations. Notice I'm pulling that off just very, very small. This is not even a half a unit. It's probably 0.11 units. So take it down to even less. You're going to say to yourself, what difference does that make? All it does is it gives a little bit of energy on the front because the anticipation is so big, it needs its own energy to get to its energy. And so you don't want to make it too big. If you make this anticipation to the anticipation too big, it starts getting a little chattery a little bit here and there. Like you wonder if stuff isn't going to start getting a little confusing. And even here, it sort of works. And so you can play around with how much of a micro anticipation you can use. And generally you're only going to do it over a single frame just to give yourself some energy. So there are some combinations about how to use eases with anticipations, how to think in terms of spacing. We do not want the spacing that we had with this guy back here where everything's just kind of boring and linear. And remember, this thing's all linear still right here. I mean, notice these tangents. They are not splined. They're not anything. So if we go ahead and spline those out, we're going to have ourselves even more smooth than we had before. If we play around with some of these values, we're going to find that we're going to have some fun with this thing, and it's going to play even smoother. And it's actually going to have more sense of polish to it. And that's this one up here. This one's already got the spline on it, but you see it feels less cleaned up than this one right here, simply because we got lazy and let the computer do for us. And we want to think about our energies, and we want to build them, and we want to use them in a proper way. Okay, I hope that was helpful to you. I hope that you saw how we can use eases in combinations with anticipations and all these other things. It's helpful to understand and see these things and to play around with them. Next thing I want to look at is just some things about blocking. I tend to work a particular way, and I want to share this way with you because people email and ask me, how do you work? And even you'll find professionals say to each other all the time, well, how do you handle this? Well, how do you handle that? Well, how do you go from blocking to this? Or how do you handle that? How do you clean this up? So we're always asking each other how to do this stuff. So I want to share with you how I block stuff. So we'll take a look at this and see what you think. Okay, here's where I'm going to talk a little bit about how I like to block things out and how I like to time things. As I've said before on previous videos, I like to think in terms of poses and fixed pose problems in posing, and then fixed timing problems in timing. So I'll tend to take and treat the entire performance as a single coin, but it has two sides. You know, you got a quarter, and that quarter has a head side and a tail side. Well, the head side is the poses, the tail side is, you know, the timing. And so what we have here is a character
And let me play a little clip of audio here for you to see what we're acting out to.
We've got bigger fish to fry.
Okay, so I acted that out, and I thought of terms, okay, what do I want this character to be like, and I just envisioned the entire performance in my head, and so I started drawing with my fancy pencil here, called a computer, what I expected those images to look like. You know, I took snapshots of the key points inside of this performance, and I just started pushing my character into that shape. And you'll notice that I'm going on successive frames here. There is no timing here. It's just images. There's nothing else back here. I could go back here and just nothing else is going on. Everything's right up here. That's because I wanted to just capture in image form only, devoid of timing, what this character is going to be like at certain moments in the performance. And I try and think this stuff out ahead of time as much as possible. If I were to select all the controls, come over here and you see all the controls. I'll hide them. You see down here the keys, everything's just on successive frames. I'll do the face, I'll do the fingers, I'll do the eyes and the expressions. I'll do all of it right up here at front because I want to be able to see what my character is like. I'll even do some rough lip sync at the moment where I know where these things are going to happen. So I break down that thing. We've got bigger fish to fry. That's the line. Well, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to start at something, so we've got. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a W there. And we've got, so we've got the V there, because I know that this is going to be kind of a breakdown into this pose for got. We've got, and then this is the anticipation for bigger, so I'm going to put the B there because I know that it's anticipation to bigger. It doesn't matter if it's exact right now. I'm not doing final lip sync. I'm just trying to capture what the character's feeling like and show that through the whole body. Make these drawings as complete as possible so that when I show this blocking to my director, if I were to have a director in this scene, then he can understand everything that this character is doing. I mean, even how they feel and how they look when they're saying things. And here is for bigger, the I for bigger, and here's the pose for fry. And so I marked out the beats. Now we're going to get into this stuff a lot more in depth in a few months when we start going into blocking, into planning, into acting, and performance choices and all that stuff. We're going to get into that right after our timing section. But I just wanted to show you this is generally how I make this stuff look. So I'll go through and I'll even work out my squashes and my stretches. Like here he's squashing down and he's kind of stretching up a little bit for that one, and then he squashes down again, and then another bit of a stretch, and then a settle. I'll work in where I want the character to go. I'll even work in the arcs. If you watch this hand here, it comes from down here, comes up, comes up, comes up, and then goes over. And so the one move, which is really clear, is up here. And then on the breakdown, I'll make sure that it kind of continues through and goes over. So I just want to make sure that I think in terms of my weight. I'll even show my drags. This finger right here, it's kind of coming up. I want to show some sense that this thing right here is actually dragging behind it. I won't save that for later. I'll try and figure out as much stuff as I can in my blocking, because the thing that you run out of time with all the time is polish. And if you don't think you're seen through, if you don't dig in deep, if you don't figure out as many things as you can at this stage, you're going to end up chasing your tail at the end. You're going to run out of time, and you're not going to be able to clean up things and get things to that level of polish that you'd like. That's even true for feature film stuff. People get this idea that, you work on a film, you got all the time in the world. No, you don't actually, because there's so many more things to control, and the expectation of the performance and expectation of the physical representation of the character is much higher. So you have to pay a lot more attention to what you're doing. But if you're working on high footage stuff, you really are screwed if you don't take time to really plan this stuff out when you're doing your blocking stage. Okay, that's enough of me ranting about blocking. I'm big blocking fan. So like a traditional animator, I just do drawings. Each of these is a drawing. I don't have anything in time yet. So now I know, listening to this track, you guys won't be able to hear it here because the recording software doesn't capture it, but this is for got, this is bigger, and this is fry back here. So we're going to take fry, we're going to move it back here, and we're going to try and hit ahead of what we're looking at for fry. This is for bigger, and this is the mouth open and bigger, so we want to kind of lead into that. And this is the B back here, the B, the anticipation for bigger, so we'll take that and we'll put it back here. And I want this to be a pretty big move, so I'm not going to put a lot of keys and a lot of frames in there in between them, because I want this to be a fairly explosive move. And I might even nudge this back one more. Okay, this right here is we've got, so put that right there. And this right here is just kind of a breakdown going into that, so I'll put that right there. Alright, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this and we're going to make a play blast and see how it looks. Okay, we're back. I've play blasted this guy through, and let's see what it seems like.
We've got bigger fish to fry. 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 We've got bigger fish to fry.
Not bad, alright? You kind of get the idea of what we're going for here. And it's really quick for me to just go ahead and say, alright, just from these drawings, which is what they are, I just think of them as really fancy drawings done on a computer instead of with a pencil. And by timing them out that way, and what this does is it allows me to fix my posing problems with a pose fix. Let's say I didn't like this one right here, or let's say I didn't like this. Say I didn't like this bend this way. I don't have to worry about fighting all the different things inside it. I don't have to worry about F curves or splines or any of that stuff. I can just go to this one drawing and fix it and change it and know that that's going to change how I work on all these things. And then I can still step through it and figure out how I want this stuff to work. So let's say I don't like this finger right here dragging down so much right there. Well, that's easy enough for me to fix. I'll just go to the drawing where that finger is and I'll just bring it up a little bit, instead of fighting with the graph editor and all these other things that are kind of a pain in the butt to deal with sometimes. Now, I do a lot of work in the graph editor, but not at this stage. I do a lot of it at the end. I'll try and put as much stuff into the scene as possible up front. And the one thing that does require, though, is it does force you to do your homework. You cannot just wing it. You have to really think about it. And I even have another version of this file, and I'll open it up, where I went even farther than this, and I put in eases into my drawings. And we've just talked about eases, and what I like to do is it helps me even capture an even bigger sense of what the energy is going to be like for a character and what they're going to do. So while we wait for this to open, okay, now that this has opened up, you'll see that I've added a few extra drawings in here, and these still have the other key drawings that I had. Actually, this is a slightly earlier version of the file, because I've since changed this pose right here. On the other one, I didn't like this too much. I thought it was competing too much with this pose, so I changed it. But I did add some eases right here to kind of fill in the differences, to get a sense of just how much energy I'm going to use. And so what I like to do with my blocking, as much as possible, I want to think about my timing in my blocking as well as my poses, so that I'm thinking about breakdowns, I'm thinking about anticipations, I'm thinking about strong poses, I'm thinking about eases, how I'm getting into and out of these things, and I'm just going to, like a traditional animator, I'm going to draw these drawings of this character in all these different shapes, so that I know what we're looking at here. So we'll step through it. Key, ease, breakdown, key, ease, anticipation / key, ease out, ease, and key. So you can call these breakdowns or additional breakdowns. I mean, the language is kind of, I to help me understand what I'm doing, I'll think of this as an ease. I really think of this right here as a breakdown, because it's kind of showing me the path of the arc more so. But you can add more breakdowns, and you can, with these breakdowns, you can add a sense of understanding the energy of the movement, and you can play with these in timing as much as you like. And it's real simple here, because we're still dealing with step keys. We're not fighting a lot of things. We're not saying, well, gosh, there's some funky movement right there. Or a lot of times when you go to spline mode too soon, I find that I end up fighting what the computer puts into the scene, and I don't like it. And I just, at this point, I want to know what my decisions are and make my decisions as good as possible, so that when I go to clean this thing up, I already know my decisions are what I want. And so then I just spend my time fighting and getting rid of what the computer is putting in there that I didn't like. Okay, anyways, hopefully this is helpful to you.
All right, guys, there you have it for this month. I hope this was real helpful to you. I hope you found some things that were able to help you out with your understanding of timing and eases. I hope my sharing my way of blocking and thinking about how I will start animating a scene was helpful to you. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not the only way to do things. I know guys who are great animators who would look at this and say, I can't animate that way. And that's fine. That's totally cool. You know what? In the end, they don't pay us for our work method. They pay us for what we make. Now, if your work method's solid, you're going to make better stuff. It's all about making it work for you and making sure that you understand. But I just wanted to give you an option of how you could think about blocking out your scenes and working with it. I know some, like I said, really, really talented guys who cannot work the way I just showed you. And that's fine. That's totally cool. But if that's a way that makes sense to you, great. I hope you can use it. And if it doesn't make sense to you, don't sweat it. Like I said, no rules, man, no rules. So just work with it if you want. Give it a try. See what you think. Give it a whack, and see what you think. And feel free to email me with questions if you have some about it. Next month we're going to get into some other fun stuff. I'm still tightening that down. I'm trying to decide if I want to go in one direction or go in another. So I don't want to get too much into what I'm going to do next month, because it could go one way or the other. But next month in October, early month, I'll send out the update telling you what we'll have, and we'll cover it then. I want to thank everybody for their great emails of support. Y'all have been great. I really appreciate it when folks write me and say you like what I'm doing and that this is helping you. And I'm glad that we can all partner together to do some good things. And so anyways, have a great September. Fall's coming. It's going to cool down. Although those of you in the southern hemisphere, summer's coming. It's going to go out. Time to go party, whatever. So thanks a bunch. All the best, and God bless.